Hello, welcome back. We've got another good friend with me today. Pretty big timer over there. We've got Ben with me. Ben, if you don't mind introducing yourself and giving us a little bit of info on you, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Thanks for having me. These have been fun. A little bit of a light and the craziness with all the coronavirus. So I've enjoyed watching them. I'm Ben Stoddard. I'm the associate head coach at SMU with men's soccer there. This is ending my second year here, second season at SMU. Previously was at Oregon State, and prior to Oregon State was an NAIA guy. So been through all sides of the journey. It's been a fun several years.
Nice. So you kind of breached into what my first question is going to be with the whole virus and the kind of situation with the spring season. How did you guys handle that at SMU? Was that difficult with all the guys? How did you deal with that, and what are you guys doing right now, considering I'm assuming everyone is off campus now?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of learning on the fly, a lot of adjustments. We talk a lot with the guys about being able to react and adapt in uncertain situations. I think that's a life lesson a little bit, and we got to learn that firsthand with all the coronavirus stuff. So all the guys are off campus. Campus has been closed now for, well over a month, probably like everybody else. Here in Dallas, we're actually a little further along than some. So we're starting to open things up. Campus is hopefully opening up here in the next week or so, and we're moving in the right direction. But as far as what we've done, a lot of Zoom calls, right? Everybody, I think, is kind of zoomed out a little bit. So we tried to keep in touch with the guys as best we can, just to check in on them, make sure they're doing well. Obviously, there's an academic aspect to it, but just with everything going on, their parents, the new financial situation, some of their parents have lost jobs or taken pay cuts, things like that. So just really done our best job possible to keep in touch with all the guys. We were doing 1 to 2 meetings a week as a team, so everybody was on Zoom. Everybody was getting to see each other. Have a little bit of a laugh and try to make it, as much of a normal, 30 minutes as possible, right? Seeing everybody's face and the banter and whatnot. So, and then our strength coach and strength staff did an excellent job of, getting resistance bands ordered and sent out to all of our guys, and then building a kind of a strength and conditioning program, DIY a little bit, do it yourself at home and with limited equipment. And we've had to adjust that a little bit, but the guys have stayed diligent and seem like they're doing a good job trying to stay fit and stay ready and stay sharp. And we're just keeping our fingers crossed that we can get together here in July when we bring everybody back for summer school.
Yeah, I know you mentioned obviously on the economy it's been tough and people have been losing jobs, and has that been a bit difficult for you guys recruiting wise? Has it made it a little bit harder, because obviously some parents are not going to have the budget that maybe they would have 6 months ago now. Has it made it a little bit difficult recruiting for you guys?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. It's no secret SMU is an expensive school. It's $77,000 a year to go to school here, and that's a challenge when the economy's good and everybody's living their normal day-to-day life. That's a challenge. And so you add the coronavirus and kind of what the economy looks like now, and it's kind of made it even crazier and made it even harder. So we're still adapting and adjusting to that. We've been very fortunate that the young men we're bringing in the 2020 class, so far everybody seems committed to being here, and we make it pretty clear in the recruiting process. Listen, the football side of things is really good at SMU, and we're trying to make it even better. But so is the education, so is the social experiment, so is the experience, and so is the city of Dallas and whatnot. So you're not paying for soccer, you're paying for the holistic college experience and a great degree as well. And I think the guys we bring in really value that. So hopefully, knock on wood, everybody's here come July.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone's kind of in that situation now and waiting to see kind of what the NCAA says and keeping fingers crossed. I think from our side, from my athletic director, for example, we've been hearing pretty positive news. I think people seem to tend to jump at the worst case scenario, the season's going to be cancelled, and
right.
We've been hearing kind of the opposite, which I think has been great. I think everyone's kind of in that situation now where we're just kind of waiting. I think everyone's waiting around and hoping for some positive news.
Yeah, it's above our pay grade for sure. I mean, it's going to be interesting. You know, like you said, everybody jumps on the negative news, and a lot of that is the drama and the media side of it. But obviously, there's I think right now there's an undercurrent of like optimism that's kind of taking place in a lot of places across the country. Maybe West Coast, California, a little bit of an exception. And so we're just holding on to that. And one of the big keys for us as leaders and coaches at SMU is to stay positive. And so all the questions the guys have asked and the parents have asked and fans and whatnot, we're doing our best to just, think positively, think optimistically. And, hopefully the people in the decision-making chairs can find a way for us to play this fall, and we can kind of get things back to the new normal. I think the normal will be different, but hopefully get back to playing.
Yeah, great. Okay, let's jump in a little bit more and kind of get to know Ben a little bit better. Growing up in America, how did you end up getting into soccer, and what was kind of your journey that got you from a young boy playing to playing in college?
Yeah, I don't know. That's still a good question. I come from a football family, like an American football family a little bit. So, I've always tried to figure it out. Like, why soccer? I think I just fell in love with it at a young age. Kind of played all the sports growing up, and my parents had me pretty active. And looking back, some of my best friends when I was, a child, we all played soccer together. And so I think it really started with us, the social piece. And just you kind of go through each sport, and baseball was too boring for me, and tried football. I actually liked football, but felt my strengths were better suited on the soccer field. And so back in when I was growing up, it seems like a long time ago now, there was still the big push for like playing one sport exclusively, and I think now it's changed a little bit, and obviously everybody has a different philosophy on that, but back then it was a huge push. You got to quit everything and play soccer. And so I grew up in Georgia and Virginia, split between the two, and basically was exclusive soccer for the majority of my childhood. And, once I made that decision, I was pretty committed to trying to be the best I could, and it's a fun journey looking back on it. You kind of bounce around and you don't know why things happen the way they do. And then you sit here today and you're thankful for it. You wouldn't change a lot. So from youth soccer, I actually went to Gardner Webb, small Division I school in North Carolina. Spent like a year and a half there. Played a little bit, didn't have a great experience for various reasons. And then, ended up going to the NAI. So I went to a small school called Indiana Wesleyan. And that was about the time I realized, okay, my playing career is probably done at the end of college, just with where I was at and the level. And so, I wouldn't necessarily change it, because at Indiana Wesleyan, I met my wife, of course, big deal. But it also was kind of the first time I started really considering, man, like, the impact you can have as a coach and the environment. I spoke on that a little bit, the environment as a youth player, and then the environment at Gardner Webb, and then the environment at Indiana Wesleyan. We're all, different. But I just felt like building a culture and getting something where you can get people to buy into, it kind of just became my passion, like out of the blue. And so I was pretty fortunate to get the first ever like graduate assistant position at Indiana Wesleyan. So I got my master's there and got into college coaching at that time when I graduated. So it's a little bit of a weird journey.
Yeah. So like you mentioned there, you started at Gardner Webb, which is obviously a Division I school, and then you went to Indiana Wesleyan. Like, a lot of people would say going from Division I to an NAI is a step down. From your experience, did you see much difference between the levels of playing at Gardner Webb and then playing at Indiana Wesleyan?
I would say the answer is no. If it's a yes or no answer, the answer is no. There's obviously a larger gap in teams, I think, at the NAI. Your best NAI teams, I think, can compete from a talent perspective with the best in the country, right, regardless of level. What I did experience at the NAI was there is a major drop off, and so there are some teams that maybe aren't as talented, aren't as well put together, and so. You go throughout the season in the NAI and you'll play a really competitive game 2-1. Both teams could be, Elite 8 caliber teams. And then your next week you you beat a team 7-8-0,
Yeah.
and so it's a little bit up and down in the NAIA, but being a Division I coach now, I would say what many don't, and that's the Division I isn't all it's cracked up to be either. There's a lot of Division I schools out there that I would say Indiana Wesleyan and some of the high caliber NAIA programs operate, better, equivalent, if not better than, and
Yeah.
so I'm not a believer that the Division I has all the best players, Division II second best, and so on. I think there's a good level with and top teams at every level.
Great. So you kind of jumped in as soon as you finished playing with Indiana Wesleyan into coaching?
Yeah. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. It's a little bit of a conversation for another day. I think I was leaning towards law school. Okay. And then the head coach at the time, who's still a mentor of mine, he approached me and just said, listen, I was the captain of the team and really was kind of, like I said, I was just bought into the leadership aspect, the culture aspect. And there was still a football side that I loved. And I was actually doing some youth coaching for a local club when I was in undergrad. And so he said, hey, I got funding for a graduate assistant. At the very least, get your master's and, see if you like it. But he kind of was the first to put the nugget into my head, like, hey, I think you can be a successful college coach if you want to be. So I jumped at that opportunity and really haven't looked back since. It's been like I said, it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, I think the GA route is kind of becoming really, really popular at the moment. I did it myself. A lot of my friends are kind of going through that system. Do you think while she was a GA, you learned a lot that's kind of led you to where you are now?
I do. I think the GA's, like, you're spot on. I'm a huge fan of that position. We have a position like that here at SMU, and we had my first year. We had a young man who's now at UNC Greensboro as a full-time assistant, and then we just started with a new GA. He's an alum of the program, and I think he's excellent. And so the reason I think the GA position is great is because you kind of get to do a little bit of everything. Obviously, you're limited recruiting-wise per the rules at NCAA Division I, but like when I was the graduate assistant at Indiana Wesleyan, I was really the first assistant, and so I got to do a lot of coaching, a lot of recruiting, a lot of program management, and you kind of get your hands wet with everything, and you learn that it's not all it's cracked up to be. It's a lot of hard work, but you also get a taste for, man, I can be pretty successful at this part, and hey, this is a strength, and then hey, this is a weakness. I'll have to get better if I'm going to stay in college coaching at, maybe the administrative stuff or whatever the case may be. So I'm a huge fan of it, and would hope that someday I'm also in a position where I can hire a GM myself and really spend a lot of time mentoring that role, because I kind of want to give back what I received. So
yeah. So from Indiana Wesleyan as a GA, SMU now as the associate head coach, that's a pretty good journey. How did that kind of happen for you? Was it a long process? Did it take you a while to get to where you are? How did you kind of go from there to there?
Yeah, no, it's been it feels long. It actually probably in the grand scheme of things hasn't been too long, 7-8 years. I've been very fortunate, and I think those who work hard, maybe good fortune kind of comes to, and so I won't deny that there's been some luck along the way, but also spent a lot of time and energy and into trying to get where I'm at now and even further, and so. Yeah, I went from Indiana Wesleyan as a graduate assistant to the volunteer at Oregon State in the Pac-12, and did a lot of the camps and administrative work the first year. There were some staff changes right away at that program, and we actually had some success. We went to the NCAA tournament, and we had some big time players in the program that year, and then some coaches moved on, and I was able to kind of move up into a full-time role. Spent a year there, and then just due to some kind of crazy circumstances, actually moved up again to be the first assistant the next year, and then the associate coach the year after that. And that program and my experience there taught me so much. I don't know if I could have learned more in the 4-year time frame, just because of all we went through as a program and all I went through individually within that program. And so I'm really thankful for it. It was some of the toughest years of my life, but really fortunate to have climbed the ladder from a position perspective, but also maybe more importantly, just the experiences I got to be a part of there for the better or for worse, led me to where I'm at now. And then in the spring of 2018, I got a call from Kevin here at SMU, and we just aligned what we see the program here heading towards. We both kind of are bought into, and personalities match, and core values, and the mission of what we want to do, and never really looked back from there. So my wife and I made the trek to Dallas, and then here we are.
Yeah. So the main thing that kind of jumps out to me there was, your first position at Oregon State was a volunteer assistant. Do you think if you hadn't have made that jump, and took the chance a little bit being a volunteer assistant, do you think if you hadn't have done that, you'd be where you are right now?
No, I don't think so. I think it took a lot of, humility, to be honest. I walked in thinking like, oh, I'm in the Pac-12. I'm back in Division I. And you learn really fast that, man, it's a lot of work, and there's not a lot of glory that comes with it. You're going to it's game day. We're getting ready for UCLA, and I'm picking up, pregame meal. It's a humbling journey. But I think coaching is a unique profession. I think it's one of the very few professions where you have to go backwards sometimes before you can go forward, and so oddly enough, I took a pay cut from an NAIA school to a Division I school. I definitely lessened my role, so to speak, and the things that I got to do, and what my kind of my responsibilities were. But had I not done that, and had the many, that have been in the same boat of me not done that, I don't know if you get to climb the ladder at all, much less as fast as I was able to do. So I think it's a huge part of anybody's coaching career is finding, okay, what's the right fit? Where can I make the most impact? And then maybe throw a little bit cautiously, but throw it out the window. Okay, I'm going to have to take a financial cut, but this is going to ultimately in the long run be the best thing for my development and my career, and where I see myself in 5, 10, 15 years. And that's kind of what I tried to do at a very young age. Like I said, there was some luck involved in it as well. Yeah. But I could tell going to Oregon State, hey, this is a program where eventually I'm going to be able to kind of get my hands wet, really, really trying to mold it and build it, and, get a lot of experience from it.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of sacrifice in any kind of role in coaching. I think some people don't necessarily see that a lot of the time. But even as a head coach or an associate head coach now, like yourself, there's still stuff that you have to do that people don't really understand. Yeah. I will always say, I think coaching is the biggest job of just grinding. And I think the ones that do it the best are the ones that end up being successful, in my opinion. So I think the fact that you've gone from a volunteer assistant, to now an associate head coach at a top Division I school is kind of a testimony to how much work you've put in. And it is a really good journey I think you've been on, and I'm sure it's going to continue a little bit further. When you say you moved to SMU, you said you spoke with Kevin, and you guys have got a really good relationship now. How important do you think that is, working as an associate head or an assistant, to have a good relationship with the head coach?
I think that's one of the best things I learned at Oregon State is you have to be aligned. You have to be with like-minded people. Because like you just hit on, we're constantly grinding, and so maybe even more than my wife at times. Kevin and the rest of the staff are who I spend the majority of my time with. And so just the pure enjoyment of it, I think it's important. But also when you get into the trenches and you're really competing, and you're working day in and day out to try to push the program in a direction, you have to be pushing together. And I think a lot of programs or a lot of head coaches, I've seen it firsthand, get the hiring process wrong, and ultimately you never really get started that, pushing the program in any direction. It kind of just sits at a standstill. And so, SMU is a great program, a lot of history here. Kevin had done a great job with the direction it was heading, long before I got here. But I think it was important for us to make sure we were on the same page so that I could maybe help take it to the next level, or at the very least keep heading in the direction we were going, and not derail the process. So I think it's everything. I won't take another job as an associate, as an assistant, unless the head coach and I are really well aligned. And that, honestly, I probably wouldn't have said that, 6-7 years ago, but it's definitely a major key for me now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The next thing I want to kind of break into a little bit is a question I get asked a lot from parents, club coaches, and when you're going out recruiting, for example, for SMU, a lot of parents will always ask me, how can I get my son into SMU, or how can I get my son into Clemson, or any of these big kind of Division I programs? When you're going out recruiting, is there something specific that you guys look for? Is it more of like, come to our camp so we can evaluate you kind of thing? Like, what do you look for when you're looking for, the next SMU soccer player?
Yeah, no, that's the number one question for sure. I think you got to hit three things for us. You've got to be a good person, a great person, first of all, and then obviously you have to be have some sort of footballing attribute that we really like about you. So you've got to be a good footballer, and then a good student as well. We would prefer. It makes our job easier. But those are the first kind of three categories, we'll evaluate on, and a little bit in that order too, and I think the culture here, and really the culture anywhere, you have to protect, but the culture here is so established and it's built, to our liking, that we don't want to derail that with bringing in, bad people. And so it starts there, getting to know them, seeing their social media, having a lot of conversations on the phone or FaceTime. Obviously, if they visit campus or if they come to a camp, you get to spend even more time with them, referencing with their club coach, their high school coach, et cetera, et cetera. I think those things are so key, and oftentimes, because they require more work, get overlooked. And so I think that's pretty important. And then just knowing where we're at, how we want to play, kind of having a game model and saying, okay, this is the structure of our team. This is what we want to do tactically. These are the players we have in our current roster. And then we've got to know then what we need to go get. So we're pretty specific in what we're searching for from a footballing perspective. But that's going to play a huge role. And then the third thing is the academics. You've got to be able to at least try, and want to receive a degree and be willing to put forth some effort on your end, because you're going to get a lot of support here, but ultimately it's you that's doing the work. And so if I had to sum all of that up into one word, it's a word we use a ton around the office. It's a winner. We're looking for guys that are winners. And really, if I had to define that, it would just be guys that are looking to pursue excellence in every facet of their life, and they want to continue to get better. I think if you show us that trait and you fit with what we need, and then it's full steam ahead. We're gonna try to sell it.
Yeah, I think the other thing for me is the camp stuff. So I get asked a lot about camps, and obviously I've worked at some of your guys' camps as well. Is that kind of one of the top tools for you guys to identify players? Because I know you bring in a lot of guys to camps, and you obviously have big numbers attending. Is that probably the best opportunity for a young player to come in and kind of impress?
For sure. Yeah, I hit on that a little bit. I should have answered your question a little better. I think it's a great way for us to get to know them, as well, and them to get to know us. It's easy to see pictures and videos, but when you come to camp, you're in the dorm, you're living the kind of the daily life outside of class of our student athletes. You're going to practice, you're back to the dorm, you're in the cafeteria, you're walking around campus. And so we get to see what you're about, and we get to see interact socially, and obviously we get to evaluate you and coach you firsthand. But it's kind of a 24/7 evaluation. And then they get to do the same for us. They get to say, hey, the coaches here are great, or they don't like us, and they don't like SMU or whatever. So it's, you both get to evaluate and see what the right fit is. And for the real young kids, it's just a fun time to get away, and they have a blast with it. And that's great. But I think when you get into the sophomore, junior, senior age that's really what's happening. Is it's kind of a 24/7 evaluation from us to them and them to us, and it's a great tool that we do put a lot of effort and energy on making sure we get the players we want at that camp, so that we can get to know them a little better, and vice versa.
Yeah, I think just from my my experience with you guys at your camps, the kids had a great time. I think that's massive when looking at summer camps. Parents will always ask, what does he have to do at the camp? And I think they kind of lose sight a little bit of that, of trying to enjoy it while you're there. My next question is going to be a good one for you. So,
okay,
is Kevin Hudson always the best player?
I think he is. I'm going on. Well, this would have been my third summer. Camps are going to be different this year, but he's 2 for 2 in my experience. The 2018 summer and 2019 summer, he was by far the best player. I think the highlight to the 2019 camp was the Meg, and I can't remember if he cut it back or if he scored it himself.
He did a flip flop.
Yeah. Okay, there you go. So there's video of it somewhere. It's on the web somewhere, and you can find it probably on Twitter. But he has it on his phone. He'll tell you he doesn't, but he watches it quite a bit. He's still he's still reminiscing on the glory days.
Okay. The next thing we're going to kind of move on to is for SMU and for yourself, I guess, going forward. What are the goals for next year? I know you guys had a good year last year. Maybe didn't end kind of how you wanted it to, but what are your goals, looking at next season?
That's a loaded question. Yeah, I mean, it only ends well for one team, right? So we feel we had a good season. We loved our group. We had a talented team. I thought we had some depth. I think that I've hit on the word, and it's an easy word to say and kind of gloss over because everybody talks about it when you talk about culture. But I really think the culture is what drove so much of our success last year, and credit to all of our seniors. They were phenomenal, and so we're really going to miss those guys. The goals for next year would be to compete again for a conference championship. That's something that we've done annually, but we don't want to take for granted, and I think in order to compete nationally, it first starts within your conference, right? And so you've got to win the first trophy available, and that's for us, that's the AAC regular season title. So that's always going to be goal number one, from a on-field perspective, and then goal number 2 will be to get ourselves seeded so that we can make another run in the NCAA tournament, and hopefully it doesn't end at the Elite Eight. So we like our group a lot. We're again, assuming we can get everybody here and coronavirus doesn't interrupt, the onboarding process and the visa process and things like that. We're pretty excited about the talent we have coming in. I think the biggest unknown for us is just losing that senior class and a little bit of leadership. There's some shoes to fill. So seeing who's going to drive us forward from within the team, and that's a huge thing that, is we have a quote, coach fed to player led, and a lot of programs are coach fed. And I think SMU is at a place right now, credit to Kevin and the rest of the staff, where it's player led. And so just making sure we have the right guys in line to continue leading the program from within the locker room. And then us as a staff, all we're trying to do is make sure they're prepared and organized, and we kind of just push them along, ever so lightly on the back, right? So
yeah, is that something you think you guys kind of grow in a player? Is that leadership aspect, or is it something you think this kid came in and he has it, or is it something you kind of nurture a little bit?
I think a little bit of both. I think there's guys that come in and they're definitely natural leaders. And from the get go, you can say, hey, this guy's got some leadership qualities. But then there's also guys that come in and they're 17, 18 years old. And, they might not really know themselves totally yet. And so once 2 to 3 years into the program, they're going from a boy to a young man, then I think they find some qualities that they might not have even known existed. And so it's a little bit of both. For us, like the key is everybody's a leader in some sense, because, and it could look totally different. You don't have to say a word. You can be a freshman, but really you're leading in a sense by example if you go about your business correctly every day, and then there's some guys that are more vocal. So everybody in our program gives an opportunity to be a leader. Obviously there's very few captains, and that's a position that we take a lot of pride in selecting, but everybody gets to lead the program in from a certain standpoint. And so hopefully along the way, if you're at SMU within the 4 years, there's a leadership development process to what we're trying to do, and by the time you're a senior, we had seniors last year that didn't play a minute, but we're really, really critical to the culture because they've been leading their own way. And then we had guys who played every minute, and their value is instrumental, not only because of what they can do on the field, but what they did for us collectively as the team spirit, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, that's a great point. What we're going to kind of lead into a little bit now is we've got obviously a lot of younger kind of coaches that watch, and I think you going on such a good journey at a young age, if you could give any kind of advice to, maybe a younger coach that's kind of getting into the game or starting to coach, what would that be?
Can you still hear me? I think my screen's frozen. I just want to make sure you can still hear me.
Yeah, you're frozen, but I can hear you, so we're all good, I think.
Okay. All right. Just ignore my my ugly mug there. But yeah, for anybody young, I think you said the key word. Like for me, it's grind. Like that starts with everything is hard work. And really nothing is beneath you from a roles or responsibilities perspective. I think that's massive. It takes a lot of humility to pull that off, and you have to kind of search within yourself and say like, okay, this is what I want to do long term. I just gotta shut up and put the work in, and so it starts there. But the second thing, and this is where maybe I would say some guys do a great job and others kind of fail, is just networking. And there's a big difference between socializing and networking. It's easy to develop friends, and obviously I encourage that. I've got a lot of great friends, including yourself in the business. But I think networking from a professional standpoint, as far as like, hey, what are you guys doing in your program that I can learn from? What did you do as a coach that I can learn from? And ultimately working camps and talking to guys when you're on the recruiting trail, et cetera, et cetera. I think those two things, hard work and networking, are massive in your development and taking the next steps. And I took both of those really seriously. And so far, knock on wood, they've paid off for me. So I would encourage any young coach that is trying to find a fit or see where they are going to go in college soccer, or any coaching for that matter, club, youth level, whatever, to work hard and network. I would say it starts with those two things.
Perfect. Yeah, I think I've spoke a lot with all the coaches on here about kind of that web of connections that you can build as a coach, and I think the broader you can make it, the better, realistically, because you never know who can help you at any given time, really, in the coaching game. So I would say networking and working, being willing to do the stuff that others are not willing to do, is definitely good advice for
yeah,
coaches.
100%. Well, that's well said. And I heard, just a quick side note on that, I heard a podcast with Steve Kerr, who's the head coach for the Golden State Warriors in the NBA, and he was saying that at one point, he was at like a middle school basketball game, I think, for one of his children, and saw something they were doing, and he took that back to the NBA with them. So you're spot on. It's regardless of level and what team they're coaching. I think you can find a way to learn from everybody and network with everybody, and ultimately it's going to help you in the long run. So
all right, well, I won't keep you frozen on there for too much longer. so thank you for coming on. I appreciate it, and I'll be keeping up with you guys next year. I'm sure you're going to have a great season again, and hopefully we can get the summer camps in. We'll see what happens, but if not, we'll stay in touch, and wish you guys the best of luck going forward.
Thanks, Dean. You're doing a great thing here at Coach's Corps, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do there in West Virginia as well, Davis and Elkin. So continue to keep in touch, and I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you very much. We'll speak to you soon, man.
Okay, all the best.
Bye.